Okay, this is try number 3 at the video. My equipment keeps malfunctioning, so I'm going to try to do this one more time, and I may have to give up. Let's say I want to change a decimal to a percent. It helps to know, what does percent mean? Percent means part out of 100. Okay, so if you want to say, to think about that, you would take your decimal. Let's say we start with like 0.43, and I want to change it to a percent. If you think about this, wouldn't I say this is 43 hundredths? Because remember, this is the tenths place, and this is the hundredths place. So if I wanted to change it to a fraction, it would be 43 over 100. That's kind of a clue as to why we do some of the things we do. I'm going to explain a quick way in a minute, but if you think about this, this is 43 out of 100. Well, what's that? As a percent is part of 100, so that would mean that's 43%. Now, we could think that way on every problem, but if you look at what happens, we can quickly see a pattern. 0.43, to change it to a percent, it became 43%. How did I get it that way? Well, if I want to look, it always happens this way. You move the decimal right 2 spaces. Move the decimal right 2 spaces. Okay? So let's try another one, and let's just say, okay, when I go from a decimal to percent, let me move the decimal right 2 places. This is almost something you've either got to think through like I did here to remember, or you've got to memorize it. It just comes down to that. You either understand that it's parts out of 100, or you memorize, move the decimal right 2 places, okay? Something else. Let's try, what if it was 0.002? What would that be? Well, if I'm changing it from a decimal to a percent, I'm going to move the decimal place right 2 spaces. That would be 0.2%, okay? What if it were a number like 50.21, and I'm supposed to write it as a percent? I use the same method. I'm going to move the decimal place right 2 spaces. This would become 5021%, okay? 100% is what 1 is equal to, so it makes sense that if I have 50.21, that's 50 whole parts. That's going to be 50 times 100, and then the 21 out of 100 left over. If you kind of want to think of it that way, you can. Again, just move the decimal place right 2 spaces. Now, what if I want to do the opposite thing? What if I want to move percents? What if I want to change percents to decimals? Basically, all I do is move the decimal place left 2 spaces, and let's see why that works. Okay, so let's say I have 51%. That means, if you think about it, let's try to understand why we're going to move it left 2 spaces. That's 51 out of 100, correct? Well, 51 over 100, remember, your first decimal place is your tenths place, and the second one is your hundredths place, so it would be 0.51. How did I get that to happen? I moved the decimal place left 2 spaces, and that's how you go from percents to decimals. If it helps you to kind of do this transition like I just did here, that's good. Or you can memorize that you move the decimal place left 2 spaces, because that's what happens every time. Let's try a weird one. What if I did 323%? Okay, I'm supposed to move the decimal left 2 spaces. So if I start here is where it is. Remember, it's always at the end of the number if you don't see it at all. You move it left 2 spaces, this would become 3.23. Let's think about that as a fraction. Maybe it would help us to think as a fraction. 323% means 323 over 100. You could divide 100 into 323, you would get 3.23. All these values represent the same amount. You can always do the long division to find the percent. When we just scoot it over 2 spaces, we're just trying to get ourselves out of doing a lot of long division. Let's work a few more percents to decimal. I'm going to pick something. I remember we've had some things like, what's 6 3/4%? Okay. The first thing I'd want to do is change it to, let's go ahead, fractions. Fractions are nice in algebra, but with percents, they're not so great, are they? 3/4 And again, you could divide 4 into 3 and find out what it is. It's 0.75. So a lot of this is just long division. I know a lot of us don't like it, but if you don't know that 3/4 is 0.75, that's really your only option, is to say, how many times is 4 going to 3? So that's, let's see, it goes in 7 times, that's 28, and you got 2 left over when you subtract. We put another 0 here and bring it down. 4 goes in 25 times. Okay, so I had 6, and then I have another. The 3/4 was 0.75. So if I'm gonna change a percent to a decimal, this is 6.75%. Now, this is still a percent. I haven't moved my decimal place. I was just trying to figure out how to represent this as a decimal first, because you kind of got to do that if you're going to bump your decimal place over 2 spots. If you don't have a decimal, you can't really do any moving it over, can you? So this is 6.75%. If I'm going to change a percent to a decimal, I'm going to move the decimal place over, left 2 spaces. Okay, so let me get a red and show that. Here's my decimal point. Let me write it down. Here's 6.75. If I move it left 2 spaces, it would be 1, 2. I'd fill in with a 0. This would be 0.0675 as a decimal.